Archive Story, Episode 5. We all know the story of Martha and Mary, where Martha was busy and Mary was seemingly doing nothing, sitting at the feet of Jesus. In Luke 10:38 through 42, in the Amplified Bible, it says, "Now while they were on their way, it occurred that Jesus entered a certain village, and a woman named Martha received and welcomed him into her house. And she had a sister named Mary, who seated herself at the feet of Jesus and was listening to his teaching. But Martha, overly occupied and too busy, was distracted with much serving, and she came up to him and said, 'Lord, is it nothing to you that my sister has left me to serve alone? Tell her then to help me, to lend a hand and do her part along with me.' But the Lord replied to her, saying, 'Martha, Martha, you are anxious and troubled about many things. There is need of only one, or but a few things. Mary has chosen the good portion, that which is to her advantage, which shall not be taken away from her.'" In every sermon I've heard preached on this, every preacher has given Martha at least a little credit, a little applaud for getting things done. After all, if we always just sit at the feet of Jesus, we will never get anything done. Or will we? Had Martha just sat down in the kitchen, she would not have been doing what Mary was. Please let me be clear. There is a huge difference in just sitting and sitting at the feet of Jesus. I am a professed Mary, always have been and always will be. So let me speak from this perspective. Decades ago, I came across Acts 1:8 in the Amplified Version of the Bible, and a light bulb came on. I latched onto it and my life forever changed. Without knowing it, I suddenly understood why it was okay to be a Mary, fully, completely, in every way. Acts 1:8 and 9. "But you shall receive power, ability, efficiency, and might, when the Holy Spirit has come upon you. And you shall be my witnesses in Jerusalem and all Judea and Samaria, and to the ends, the very bounds of the earth." And when he had said this, even as they were looking at him, he was caught up, and a cloud received and carried him away out of their sight. This verse is the last recorded thing that Jesus said to his disciples before he went away. He instructed them to go wait for the Holy Spirit to come baptize them with fire and with power. He promised that this baptism would give them power, dynamin in the Greek, meaning ability, efficiency, and might. My eyes were open to that fact and I anchored it into my faith. If you don't believe it, it can't work for you. I've worked in multiple corporate jobs and run and managed many businesses in my life. I've been asked for years, "How do you get so much done?" To which the answer I always had was usually never one most people wanted to hear. Over 2 decades ago, I worked for a national corporation. I received a call one day from my manager who told me I was to speak at our company's national recruiting conference and tell everyone why I had been so successful in recruiting with our external clients. This was not the recruiting of people we hired for our own company, at which I always exceeded my goals, but in working with other companies like Procter & Gamble, Novartis, and others, helping them recruit. I had a stellar reputation and success rate there. When my manager asked me to speak at the conference, I promptly said no. We were close friends and both were Spirit-filled Christians. I told him there was no way I could talk to a large secular group of people and tell them why I was so successful and not tell them the real reason. After much back and forth, I, of course, did the conference. My manager simply left me with, "Just tell them the things that you do." It was the best I had to offer in such a restricted environment. I gave the presentation. I showed them what I did, step by step, how I charted my steps, the file system I had created, and so much more. At the end, many of my colleagues came up to me and said, "It's just too much work." I was surprised because I never felt the effort. Yes, I did work, but the work seemed effortless. I spent a ton of time doing nothing. I also spent a ton of time alone at Jesus' feet. In fact, this job was one in which I was doing my work alone most of the time. During that time, I was always acutely aware of the presence of Jesus right there with me, leading me and guiding me. I was constantly talking to Him as I worked, keeping an ear leaned toward the Holy Spirit. It was He who gave me the way to do what I did. Even though in the natural it appeared to be a lot of work, with the Holy Spirit efficiency, it seemed very little to me. That very little work resulted in letters from the top praising my efforts. I have a notebook where I have kept every letter, including the one from the head of Human Resources Department at Procter & Gamble, praising my efforts and telling my company that they should clone everything I am doing because of my results. Fast forward a couple of decades. I currently handle 3 businesses, more or less, all small yet equally challenging. Last year, I wrote and published 3 novels. When the Holy Spirit said it was time to write, I wrote, and that was the result. It was while I was spending time at the feet of Jesus and being with Him that I so clearly heard, "It is time to write." And with His timing came His dynamin, ability, efficiency, and might to write, publish, and market 3 novels in 1 year. I've had countless people amazed at the accomplishment, but I am here to tell you it really seemed effortless to me. I again spent tons of time doing nothing. I also spent tons of time at the feet of Jesus. How can this be? I know all you self-professed Marthas out there want to know. All of you Marthas who were so pumped by all the work you do and are constantly doing, almost to the brink of pride. Let me tell you how. It is simply the difference between a headwind and a tailwind. Doing anything without the efficiency received by sitting at the feet of Jesus results in a headwind. It will always be harder for you, and you will always accomplish less, no matter how hard you try. I much prefer the tailwind. I dare say that Mary, having sat at Jesus' feet, could have gotten up afterwards and completed dinner in a fraction of the time over Martha's lengthy hard work. My husband is always amazed at how quickly I can get a meal together. Others are often amazed at everything else I do, but it is not me. It is the efficiency, ability, and might of the Holy Spirit. Let me challenge you that many out there who appear to be Marthas are actually Marys who sit at the feet of Jesus, then are production powerhouses. Being a Mary and knowing who is really responsible helps keep me from the temptation of pride. I have no doubt that I am just the vessel, and were it not for the power of the Holy Spirit, I would have just been sitting and accomplishing nothing. I guard my time at the feet of Jesus. I won't give it up. I don't do early morning things with friends or colleagues. I always graciously decline, unless, of course, it is absolutely necessary. I understand the worth and the value of that time, and I refuse to give it up. Plus, I enjoy it way too much. It still feels foreign to me when people marvel at all that I get done and all that I do, and unfortunately how it makes them feel so inadequate. But everyone, absolutely everyone, has access to this very same efficiency, ability, and might. We've not even talked about the word ability, specifically in this definition. That's another thing that people are often commenting about, is my ability. But, again, it is not me. It is the ability that comes from sitting at the feet of Jesus. Mary could do in a fraction of the time what it took Martha endless amounts of time to do. I know I'm a Mary. Thank you for listening. Be sure and subscribe to this podcast, plus my other podcast, The Story with Nancy Jackson, where you will hear the actual, professionally narrated novel that syncs with after the story. Link is in the notes.